If you've ever Googled what do I need to bring hiking, you've definitely come across the 10 essentials. But what do they even mean, and do you really need to bring all that stuff with you? I'm heading out for a hike today and I'm going to have a chat about each one of the 10 essentials and see if you really do need to bring them with you. So first on your list is clothing. Clothing is your first defense against the elements when you're out hiking. The key when it comes to clothing is staying dry. And you do this by removing or adding layers as you cool down and warm up. This is also known as the layer system, and I'm going to do a full video with everything about the layer system, so keep an eye out for that. Another tip is don't wear cotton. Cotton absorbs a lot of moisture, which leads to a loss of insulation. And again, if you get wet, you're going to get cold. And always bring more layers than you think you need. The weather, especially here in Ireland, can change very quickly. And although the weather might be fine when you left the car park, don't forget that the higher up you go, the colder and probably the windier it's going to get. Oh, and don't overlook your footwear. If you're heading up to the mountains where it's often boggy and uneven, I would highly recommend waterproof boots. The ankle support will keep your feet nice and safe and sound, and waterproof kind of speaks for itself. Nobody wants wet feet coming home. And one item that you might not even think of is to bring a multi-tool. Some lists actually have this as a knife as well. But I prefer like a multi-tool, like a Swiss Army knife. It can come in handy for various situations like repairing gear, cutting cordage if you're setting up a shelter, or more importantly, open packets of snacks. Just note I said opening packets of snacks, I didn't say sharing snacks. If you are carrying a knife or a multi-tool that has a knife, I would just recommend checking the local laws about carrying knives. They can differ wildly from place to place. And another addition for gear repair that can always come in handy as well is duct tape. You'd be surprised how many times you can use it for patching up holes in jackets or bags. I've used it a bunch of times. I've often just wound it around either my hiking poles or a lighter that I keep with my stove. Invaluable. Item number 3 is my favorite, and that's because it's food. Hiking is hard work and you burn a lot of calories, so make sure to bring plenty of snacks with you. I would also recommend always bringing more than you think you need, and that's because your hike might just take longer than you think it will. Some popular choices are protein bars, fruit, dried fruit, sandwiches, even a cup soup. I often bring like mug shots, which is dried pasta, for those colder hikes during the winter. Item number 3 for your list is water. And again, as with food, always bring more than you think you're going to need. Just anticipate that your hike may take longer than you think it will. The general rule of thumb when it comes to water is a ½ litre for 1 hour of moderate activity in moderate temperatures. The other thing to keep in mind is 1 litre of water roughly measures 1 kilo. So just to cut down on weight, if you know you're going somewhere that has a lot of water sources, you may want to consider using a water filter. And don't forget, never drink water without treating it first. You might think it looks like beautiful, clean, clear, fresh mountain water, but trust me, it's still full of nasties. It's happened to me a couple of times that I've been walking along, looking in a stream and thinking, wow, that water looks so fresh. But then the further upstream I went, I realized that there's something gross, like a dead sheep or a dead deer or something floating around in it. So just don't risk it. Item number 5 is a head torch. As I said earlier, your hike may take longer than you think it will, and you really don't want to be hiking back in the dark. Especially here in Ireland, in the wintertime it gets dark very early and very quickly. A great place to start with a head torch is one with interchangeable batteries. That means you can just change them out once they die and you won't run out of power halfway home. If you can get a waterproof one, that's even better, because if you're hiking in the rain and it's not waterproof, it can get easily damaged. You really don't want to rely on your phone as a light, because you really need to have a fully charged phone, and using the torch for a long periods of time is going to really quickly deplete the battery. Speaking of phones, number 6 is communication and navigation. So always bring a fully charged phone with you, and if you need to, you can also bring a portable charger or a portable battery pack. And keep in mind that in colder conditions, batteries will often deplete much quicker. Always communicate your route and expected completion time with a buddy before you leave the house. And you can use apps like Hiker to share your live location with your buddy so they can track your progress during the course of your hike. You can also use Hiker to plan your routes. I've used Hiker Pro for years, particularly because I really like that they have east-west maps included in the subscription. And those are the paper maps I also use, so everything is consistent. And if you fancy giving the app a try, you can use my code AOB50 for a 50% discount off your first annual subscription. And as I mentioned, I always bring a paper map and a compass out with me, and it's highly recommended that you learn how to use them. You can either do a mountain skills training course or a hill walking course, or even just check it out on YouTube for some basic navigation skills. But it's highly recommended not to depend on stuff like phones or a GPS, just in case of an emergency, in case I lose signal, in case I lose battery. You should always have paper map and compass as a backup and know how to use it. There's also a couple different devices that you can use in the case of an emergency. If you do lose signal or you lose battery on your phone, for instance. One example is the Garmin InReach. It's a small GPS-based device that you'd keep on your person when you're out for a hike. And in the case of an emergency, or if you need assistance, or even just to communicate with your buddy, you can use that and it doesn't depend on phone signal. Number 7 on your list is a first aid kit. A basic first aid kit is probably more than enough for most circumstances, but there's a couple extra items that you might want to pop in for hiking specifically. So things like tick tweezers, a small mirror, antihistamines, anti-inflammatory tablets, or even blister packs can come in really handy. And another pro tip when you're packing your bag, make sure your first aid kit is somewhere that's easily accessible. You don't really want it squished down the end of your backpack somewhere underneath your jacket and your snacks, because when you need it, you might need it in a hurry. So make sure it's packed in a pocket or an outside pouch on your backpack. And we finally made it to our destination for our hike today, and that is Comfy Lake here in the Comer Mountains. And just have a look at that. Look how gorgeous that is. Absolutely no one here, the whole place to ourselves except for the screaming sheep. And this is when I realised my boyfriend had gone on a litter picking side quest. Number 8 on the list is shelter. The main use of shelter is to get you out of adverse weather conditions. This could be as simple as providing you a shelter for a snack break or a navigation break when it's lashing outside, or it could be used to keep you dry and warm in an emergency situation. Hypothermia is one of the big concerns when you're out on the hills for an extended period of time. Remember, if you get wet, you're going to get cold. The 3 things to keep in mind when you're thinking about shelter are in, on and under. So on is having something to lie on or to sit on, basically a barrier between you and the ground. If you're lying or sitting directly on the ground, you're going to lose body heat a lot quicker. In, it refers to your clothing, which we touched on earlier. Just remember to layer up, bring all those extra layers with you and put them on if you need to. And if you have a foil blanket, even better. Under refers to getting under something to keep the rain off of you. So this could be your bivy bag, it could be a storm shelter, or even a small tarp. Number 9 on the list is fire, but here in Ireland I think that might be a little bit unrealistic. It's very difficult to source dry material, start a fire and maintain a fire. So in an emergency situation, it's probably going to be pretty impossible. Instead of trying to start a fire in emergency situations like that, it might be more realistic to pack something like a foil blanket that will reflect your body heat back. I often pack a small stove, particularly in the winter time, just because it's nice to be able to boil water or heat up food, particularly on a cold day. But in those emergency situations, that could come in really handy. Speaking of keeping warm, last but not least, number 10 on the list is sun protection. Now, believe it or not, in Ireland, I know it rains a lot, but we do get sun, like a day like today. So it is really important to make sure you put on your sunscreen before you leave the house. Factor 50 is recommended for extended periods of time in the outdoors, or alternatively, you could just wear like long sleeves and long pants. Just to note, caps like this one don't actually cover your whole face, so they do recommend wearing a wide brim hat instead that will cover the bottom half of your face and the back of your neck. But I'm just a cap lady, I can't help it. A buff is always handy to carry as well. In warm weather, you can use it to cover your head, cover your neck, or you can even dip it in some cold streams and it will keep you nice and cool. It's always handy to have as well, particularly if you're heading up to higher elevations because of wind burn. So you can actually get burnt by the wind, particularly here across your face, your cheeks and your nose. So a buff can be quite helpful then because you can actually just use it to pull up over your face to keep you out of the wind. I have a friend. Can you see that? What is that? I know nothing about bugs. Oh, bye. So that's it for our 10 essentials. If you have your backpack, you're ready to head out and hit the trails. Just remember to keep an eye out. I'm going to have another couple of videos coming out in the next couple of weeks that go through a few more of those in a bit more detail, like what you need to know before you buy your first waterproof jacket, or tips on getting new hiking boots that fit properly, things like that. So if you are interested, keep an eye out, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you soon. So happy hiking, agus long a fool.